as is required.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, folks, I'd like to welcome everybody to the November meeting of the Harwich Golf Committee. We've got a very full agenda. Welcome to Mr. Senate. As you probably have observed on our agenda, your letter is included, and public comment is reserved to the end of the meeting. So I hope everybody appreciates our methodology. Consistent with the town's demand that we engage in these remote meetings, and last night Roman and I presented rates and fees to the selectmen. They reinforced the fact that they will have the capability to meet in the Griffin Room now in a hybrid format, perhaps. It'll depend what Mr. Powers decides, but for the time being, meetings such as ours are relegated to this format. There is the public is not allowed to attend, et cetera, but is certainly able to participate via the instructions on the published agenda. So I'm going to move right to move right to the agenda, and in particular, the consent agenda consisted of approval for the minutes of August and the two meetings in October. So I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Okay, and a second. A second on adoption of the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Okay, without discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The minutes are approved as written, and they will be posted, both on the committee website and on the town website as well. And I intend to do that tomorrow. I've been trying to catch up on some paperwork, that's been outstanding for a while. And consistent with the agenda, we turn now to the director's report. And Roman, thanks for your degree of preparation. Just to preface Roman's report, last night we presented rates and fees. I was extremely pleased that Selectman McCaskill made a motion to approve as recommended by the committee. And he also cited the committee and the director of golf and his staff for their hard work and due diligence. The motion was seconded by Ed McManus, and it was passed without discussion unanimously. So I think that's a credit to your input as a committee, as well as Roman's efforts as well. Thank you. So Roman, it's your show.
Okay, thank you, Clem. Okay, so bear with me for one moment. I've got too much on my screen to read this. It's end to end, but this I'm going to start off with the golf course superintendent's report. In general, Sean gives an update on the golf course, the projects. I'll hit the highlights here. As far as procurement goes, the new equipment lease has been ordered. As I mentioned in the last meeting, it was accepted by the town selectmen, and we're waiting for delivery on the new equipment. The center circle and parking lot landscape has gone to bid, as you all know, and we're expecting bids on Thursday, November 19th at 2 p.m. I did receive word today that we received the bid already today, so that's good news. We had 6. I won't jump ahead on the agenda, but we did have 6 people show up for the mandatory walkthrough, and 1 bid has come in so far. So we have a bidder is good news. And then Sean mentions what the golf course is doing, shutting down the golf course, blowing out the irrigation system, verti draining the greens, et cetera, applying snow mold, all normal practices. So I won't bog you down with that, but that is there if you want to read it. Okay. So a few items that I wanted to really get into some detail on here. Well, one thing we're working on right now is setting up the 2021 T-sheet model. And I just wanted to go into some details about how we're setting that up right now, because this is the time of year we build it. The first week in January, the T-sheet is open for bookings. So it's very important the preseason building we do with it. And really what I'm trying to do is follow exactly how we finished 2020. Which is 70-30 distribution between members and non-members on weekdays and 60-40 on weekends. As I said, this is subject to change based on annual pass sales and revenues. As you'll see when we get into the spreadsheet, the revenue spreadsheet, for the month of September, revenues were pretty much the same as they were last year, very, very close. Yeah, we did 1,300 more rounds, which really shows we've had a major commitment to more rounds by our annual pass holders. And if the annual pass sales are not of a similar level as they currently are, we're gonna have to adjust that distribution so that we can make up the revenues in greens fee sales. But to get into the details, Wednesday, we open no morning back 9 in June and August, which we've always done. But what'll be new is a 7 a.m. start instead of 6 a.m. because we've made a commitment to the light sand top dressing with our new top dresser, as was recommended by the USGA. So we're excited to start that program next summer. That requires a 1 hour commitment on a delayed start on the first tee. So what we do is expect, as we heard from the USGA, very good results in lessening the thatch on our greens and better turf conditions. As far as leagues go, I want to set up the tee sheet once again for a 5-hour commitment to the sweeps. I think that's been a very good partnership. The CVWGA, we will set it up with 2.5 hours, which has accommodated their full field. And as I mentioned here, we're not giving them half what the men have. We're giving them, we've made a commitment to the ladies because we give 5 hours to the men. There's a commitment to the ladies that we will accommodate their entire field. So if they have 3 hours worth of tee times, we'll accommodate that. If they have 3.5, we'll accommodate that. They have been very steady at that 2.5 hours as far as the number of people who want to play in ladies' day. So that has accommodated their full field, but we'll do whatever we need to do to accommodate their full field. Thursday twilight, we're going to set that up for 1.5 hours in twilight time, 4 to 5:30. That's become very popular. In the past, that was a 1 hour league. That's been oversubscribed at 1.5 hours these days. So that's a very popular after work league for most people. And I'd encourage you, if you don't play in it, to give it a try. That's a very fun group. And they normally go in and have a good time in the restaurant afterwards. And it's one of the best nights for the hot stove business-wise. We will reserve end-of-day tee times for the first tee and PGA Junior League as needed. We don't know exactly what the commitments are going to be there yet, but we will, once we begin to discuss with the first tee director and the PGA Junior League what is needed for tee times, we'll reserve those. Those are all end-of-the-day tee times, though. Those are in the 5:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. range. And then the men's and 9-hole ladies league, the men's and women's 9-hole leagues will go off just as they have in the past. Ladies will have the entire back 9 on Tuesday uninterrupted, and the men will have a block of tee times on Monday afternoon as needed. And moving on.
Walden?
Were there any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question. Roman?
Fire away.
Roman, can you go back to the first slide? Can you go back to the first slide, please?
I think I can. Yes.
First slide. Before that.
Was there a slide before that? Oh, the superintendents, yes.
All right, it says the new equipment lease has been ordered. Is that the golf carts?
No, that's the maintenance equipment.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Roman, I had a quick question regarding this equipment lease. could you give us some kind of indication as to when Sean anticipates getting this new equipment, and when will it be put in line for operational purposes?
I'll give you a very general idea of it. Yes, we do expect some pieces of the equipment to be arriving later this month into December. We don't plan to put it right into play because it's just not good for the equipment to put it right to work in winter conditions. So we expect everything to be up and running for our first cuts of the year as far as the mowers. But we're expecting that equipment to come in later this month, early next month, is my understanding.
Yeah, and for the record, is the agreement with John Deere or Turo or?
It's with John Deere.
John Deere. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John Crook.
Yes, John.
Yeah, Roman, I have a question. Do we participate with Youth on Course, which is that program where a youth can play for $5 at a certain
Yes, sir. We've been involved. Yeah, we've been involved in that since its inception, and we do very well with it. We have a number of Youth on Course rounds every month in the summer, and it's a great partnership with our First Tee program because the First Tee kids are all going to be encouraged to become Youth on Course members. But yes, we've been involved in that for 2 years, John. It's a great program.
Yeah, I just didn't know whether or not we were coordinating that with First Tee.
You know, that's a connection with the First Tee, and we've been on the Mass Golf website as a participant in that for 2 years.
That's right, I thought. Okay. And how many rounds do we do with the Youth on Course?
It's not a big number. I'd say over the course of the summer, it's under 100.
Okay.
But it's one of those things, John. It's pretty new in our area, and it's gaining some steam. So you know, the first year we had it, it was probably a dozen rounds. This past year, it was probably 70.
Yeah. The reason I say that is I know Mass Golf is putting a lot of emphasis behind it now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more people are starting to know about it. We'll advertise it more as well. For those of you that don't remember, we have a junior rate of $15. But because of our partnership with Youth on Course, if the junior is a member of Youth on Course, they only pay $5, and Youth on Course pays us the other $10 to subsidize their round.
Yep.
Okay, I'll move down to the spreadsheet next. I did notice one anomaly on the spreadsheet under capital fee for FY21. That $860 doesn't look right to my eyes because we only had 515 past sales. But that's really the only number there. This is, again, the monthly spreadsheet that I plan to submit to the committee every month. This only goes through September. But as I mentioned, I think there's some interesting data here in that September, the month financially was very similar to FY20. And yet we did 1,300 more rounds. So once again, that really showed a commitment to annual pass holder rounds. And it's a little concerning to me because that's a lot more pressure on the golf course. You know, rounds on the golf course have a cost. And as I'm going to get into, we're looking at budgetary cuts for next year. So, you know, more rounds with less budget puts a lot of stress on the facility. But anyway, we're at the very least accomplishing revenue goals. As you'll see on the right side of it, the year-to-date numbers are good. But one thing I keep in mind there is that's comparing to last year where we had a tornado, and the amount we're up in revenue so far is just about the same amount we received compensation for being down last year in the tornado. So all in all, in the revenue side, we're quite even with a lot more play. Did anybody have any questions on the financials? I had the fund balances on the second slide here. But they don't say that. Yeah, go ahead.
You just said that next year our budget is going to be down. We're going to be losing some of our budget.
So I received the budget message from the town administrator last night. I believe it was included in your packet. The Board of Selectmen's budget message for the year. Our orders are to have a level funded budget for next year.
I thought I saw a letter and it said that each department could budget for a 2% increase.
So that's the letter from the selectmen is they want to start with a level funded budget, but do not go over 2%. That was their general message to the town residents of the town.
Right.
Our message, which I have to follow more directly from the town administrator, which came out last night, is he's interpreting that to say to go to the departments and say level funded budget. So fund our budget with the exact same numbers as last year, and that equals a reduction because when you start factoring in the employee costs that have to go up or contractually go up. Then those numbers have to come out of other areas. So any cost of services or contractual stuff that is going to naturally go up is going to have to come out of other lines in the budget. So we are looking at a budget cut in that regard. A level funded budget will be a budget cut. And I got that message last night. So we're just taking our first steps with the budget. I haven't even acted on it yet, just digested it last night when it was announced. But we'll begin the budget process. I have to have that submitted in Munis by December 4th.
That seems pretty harsh. In fact, when you take a look at the different departments in town that produce revenue for the town, there's only about 3 of them. And if we have to be level funded, that makes it very difficult to really maintain the revenue numbers in.
I have concerns, John. I mean, as I told you, just for the month of September, 1,300 more rounds on a golf course. John, rounds on a golf course have a cost. I mean, more rounds are more wear and tear on the facility. And when you have more rounds with less budget, you're putting a lot of stress on your facility. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. It's not a good trend.
No, it's not. But once again, as we get lumped in. We're a town department, and the town has declared a financial crisis for this upcoming fiscal year. And this is how they're beginning the year. Instead of starting the year with a regular budget and then cutting as they go, they want to start lean and then see if we can add to it as we go.
Roman, what do you use for revenue forecasts when you do your budgeting?
So what you'll see on the, it's very simple. What you'll see on the far right side here, where we have projected, it's just a 4-year weighted average. So that's provided by the finance director.
So that doesn't take into any consideration the rate increases that we're going to have for next year?
No, it does not. So it's just a measuring stick, really. What I have there for projections is just a measuring stick. As I did mention, though, in our rate and fee, it's a totally separate item. As I mentioned in the rate and fee package, I'm anticipating our revenues to get up near $2 million next year, based on our rates and fees. So what you'll see there projected, that's what our Munis program spits out as a 4-year weighted average. What I'm considering, if all weather conditions are good and we don't have any shutdowns again, I think the next fiscal year, based on our rates and fees that were just approved last night, we'll have our revenues approaching $2 million. And that I believe, Clem, you can speak to this if you got a different impression. But the way that our rates and fees were so well received last night, I think, is because in the package was the commitment to pay for our debt, to pay for our non-budgetary costs, employee costs, because that's a real trend with what the town's trying to do. If you saw in the budget message that I included in this packet, the selectmen want to allocate those, we've had debates if they're indirect costs or not, but they're non-budgetary costs. The fact that we included those in our forecasting, I think made our rate and fee recommendation very well received and has us ahead of the game to a degree.
So if you're forecasting, for the lack of a better term, you certainly can't guarantee it. I understand, Roman, closer to $2 million for projected revenue, that's a good 12, 13% above what's projected now based on the 4-year weighted average. Does the finance committee give us any leeway in terms of, because of the rate and fee increase and projected increased revenues, for us to submit a budget that in essence is flat, except for the difference between the 4-year weighted average and the projected revenues? I mean, can we budget to $2 million basically, which is really a net zero budget, if that's what the forecasted revenue is.
Well, I mean, I'm hopeful that we get there. I think in these day and times, who knows if we're going to have spring shutdowns again. I mean, I'd be uncomfortable really saying that is something that's achievable. The reason that I put that in there was, or that I throw that number out there, our last normal year was FY19, where there were no necessary shutdowns, and it was before we were impacted by the tornado. And our revenues approached 1.9 million. I think they were $5,000 or so below 1.9 million. Based on the amount of play we had that year, based on the amount of sales we had that year, if all things were the same, our rates and fees that were approved last night would generate another $115,000. That would put us over $2 million. But to answer your question of if that it comes into any consideration, I need to follow the budget message from the town administrator and input the budget according to his directions by December 4th. Then I submit a narrative to him that tells him in detail what we need and what we're going to lose basically by following the directions. And he wants to, he may then advocate for us to get a little bump up in the budget.
Is there an opportunity, if we budget flat, is there an opportunity over the course of the year, if we see that revenues are higher and projecting over 2 million, to in advance submit a prioritized list of, if we could get some more money there in the upcoming fiscal year based on a revenue increase, this is what we would spend it on?
We've never done that. I think there are mechanisms that will allow that. I think that if it came to that case where we had needs and our revenues were exceeding expectations, I think that there are mechanisms where we could ask for more money, ask for some more money to be budgeted. But we've never done that. I've talked to Sean briefly about this because we kind of knew this budget message was coming. And we're pretty confident that we can achieve what we need to based on the fact that our capital outlay line item is largely undedicated this year. We spent $18,000, I think, on the old dump truck, just getting that running this year. But other than that, we pushed off any of the paving that was going to happen out of that line item. That's our kind of rainy day line item. With if the pump house breaks down, or if we really need some rainy day help, that it comes out of there. So as I mentioned when we were discussing capital items, it's good not to dedicate all that money. That money, we have a little flexibility with that currently, and I'll have to look at what we have dedicated for FY21. I'm sorry, 22, but I would keep that. If the budget's going to be really thin, I would not dedicate a whole lot out of that line item just to be there as a safety net.
Yeah, I just think, especially since we're in essence supposed to be cost neutral, that we should, as much as we can, be prepared that if revenues do grow beyond the current projection and what we've forecasted as part of the budgeting process for revenue, again, a prioritized list of what we would spend it on, because in essence, if we come in 150,000 over in revenue than what we've budgeted on the expense side, it's lost money to the golf course. We should be in a position where we can, I mean, we're almost like a nonprofit. We should figure out how we're going to maintain a break-even revenue versus cost.
Yeah, I do. I think that, I mean, I'm going to have to follow this budget message clearly, but like I mentioned, if we do have needs and it turns out that, we need to, we have some needs that are go beyond our budget, or we're going to blow the budget, but our revenues are either on pace with what's forecasted or outpacing it. There are mechanisms, I do believe, to have some line items bumped up in the budget. I wouldn't bet on it because, from what I understand from the selectmen and the finance committee, they track golf revenues as part, they go into the general fund as part of the general fund that pays for everything. So, you know, they don't look at that as our money. They look at that as the town's funds that are going to cover expenses. So there are mechanisms in place. I wouldn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. My message is clear to December 4th, submit a balanced budget, a budget with no increases.
Understood.
Okay, do you want to continue?
Sure. So I'll just point out here, I'm sorry, my screen's a little bit covered here, but the funds on the right, they do show what was expected immediately after town meeting, the $100,000 out of the Golf Improvement Fund, and then out of the Infrastructure Fund, the annual payment on the Cart Barn project. I'll keep moving on if there's no questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking at the debt service, it's not on the screen now. It's the next page, I think.
Sorry, John, I did not copy that into the PowerPoint, but yeah, I do know what you're talking about. Go right ahead.
There's 4 items listed there. I just want to make sure I understand what those 4 items are right now. It looks
Okay.
like it looks like the one that started on 10/15/6 was what, the residual of what was left on the irrigation project?
Yes. So
The one that started on 10/12, I don't know what that is.
So I believe the one on 06 was irrigation. The one on that's listed at 12 was a refinance of the upgrades to the driving range. That happened, I believe, in 05 or 06. And then the third one is the building of the clubhouse. And then the fourth one is our Cart Barn project.
No, okay. So if the fourth one is the Cart Barn project, I just can't believe, I don't understand the numbers then. I thought that was a $1.4 million project.
1.2.
1.2. And I don't see those numbers kind of reflected, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Sorry, I can't access that page right here while I've got this up. What you will see for FY21 is the $108,000 payment that's listed under the infrastructure fund here. That was our annual payment for that. What are you missing on the chart, John? Do you think it's over or under?
I think it's under. I think in terms of the principal, it's under, isn't it?
I don't believe so. I'm wondering if maybe it's not extending out. The sheet you got isn't extending out as far as it goes.
Could be.
It is because mine stops at 2027, and it looks as though there's more columns beyond that.
Yeah, it goes well beyond 27.
Yeah.
I believe it was a 20-year note.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Do we know the interest that we paid on that note?
The only thing I have, John, is the sheet you're looking at right there, the annual principal and annual interest. I don't know beyond that. No.
Going back to our discussion about maybe a year ago, I think the game plan at that time was to combine 2 or 3 of the huge projects in town under one bond, wasn't it?
When they sold the bond, I believe that was the case. I'll be honest, John. I'm not really involved in this. This is once these payments go in, this is turned over to the finance director. I really have not been involved in it. I could ask any questions you'd want to ask.
I understand you weren't involved in it. I just wanted to know how they're doing their financing, because obviously it has an impact on us. Because the thing I'm most concerned about, going back to the other page too that Steve brought up, when you take a look at the golf expenses, right now we're budgeting almost $40,000 less next year, and we're expected to do more, and we're projecting to do more revenue, which is a red flag to begin with. But I mean, I don't know how we cut $40,000, because none of that all of that is basically on course expense. with no labor. Labor, we're keeping basically where it is, salary and wages. But I mean, in terms of the golf expenses, that's all coming out of the golf course. And that's a bad sign.
I'll be able to report back when I actually get the line items and how we need to adjust the line items in our budget based on what we need to cover for other expenses. But I agree, John. I agree that it's a difficult budget. What's that?
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe I'm following you. I know that when I'm looking at putting in the budget for next year, we're definitely going up in labor costs. I mean, we have contractual needs where we have 9 full-time employees that all get step increases and other increases. And then, the cost of utilities goes up. All those things have to be absorbed by the other line items, such as, groundskeeping equipment and pro shop supplies. And those line items are going to need to, what I'm hoping is, line items such as unemployment, or there's line items that we don't spend to the limit right now, can be trimmed a little bit. But once again, I've mentioned to this committee, and I'm sure you know that, John, over the last 2 years, we've trimmed our budget over $50,000 based on the town asking us to and needing us to. So we don't have a whole lot of fat in that budget. We've trimmed it when we could, but where I'm hoping to find that money is in line items such as unemployment and other line items that we historically don't spend to the limit. But the general feeling, I'm with you entirely. It's going to come out of our operational expenses.
Now, if I'm reading this right, when you take a look at golf expense,
Yes.
We're talking there chemicals, fertilizer, et cetera, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you start dropping chemicals and fertilizers by 40 grand over the course of a year, that has a big impact on the golf course condition.
So what I would say to that, John, is, I mean, I think what you're mentioning would be the last item we would cut. So, but we'll look at the budget. I mean, we'll look at the budget and we'll find other items, and we'll have to be thinner in other areas. I would not. I think at the end of the line would be chemicals. We have a lot of things.
The only reason I bring it up, Roman, is that obviously the town depends on us for revenue.
Yes.
And being around golf courses a little bit, when you see golf courses drop their operational budgets, they're trying to bleed the money out of a golf course. And that maybe works for a year or two, but after a year or two, it goes down the tubes exponentially. So, I mean, then you really have a bad problem, if you know what I mean. So,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
To protect your asset and to your revenue base, you have to spend. And that's the only point I'm trying to make.
No, I agree with you. Well, once again, we're in the infant stages of this budget, and what we do have going for us is some of our dedicated funds. We have more flexibility with, I'll throw this out there. This is a tool that I would have, is our Pro Shop revolving fund has some flexibility in spending. If the Pro Shop revolving fund can absorb office equipment needs which is a line item that we have, for $10,000, say, it's appropriate. That's an appropriate usage of the Pro Shop revolving fund, would be to absorb some of those around the clubhouse expenses and building expenses that would give some relief to the budget. And I think as we get into the restaurant lease later, there's some money there that can be saved. So I know what you're saying, and I'm not happy with the budgetary process we're going into, but I don't see us losing any money on actual golf course. I think we're going to find a way to work through this by cutting money and reallocating monies around the clubhouse and for equipment around there, services in that regard. I don't see us going to the golf course.
Yeah, so the only reason I brought it up is I just don't want anybody from the town coming back 2 years from now saying, oh, what happened to the revenue?
Yeah, no, I agree. And
a lot of these people really don't understand the mechanics of how you run a golf course.
And, to your point, John, when we had the closure this spring and we were put on a spending freeze, we used our chemical backups. I mean, we went through our backup chemicals. So normally, you do have some backup stuff. When we were put on a spending freeze, we got rid of our backup. So I agree totally with you. I have confidence we're going to work our way through this, but it's going to be a difficult process. But I'll be in touch with the committee throughout, and I'll let you know what the budgetary process is throughout. Like I said, I would not look right at this to say a budgetary reduction is going to go right to the golf course. So we do have other areas, and such as we have a $23,000 annual line item for unemployment that we have not been spending up to. We've done a good job managing our unemployment, and like I said, the Pro Shop revolving fund can absorb some costs around the clubhouse that have line items. So there are ways we can get through this.
So Roman, the point is that'll be available in December. That's your target.
So again, this is brand new, Clem. I have to have our budget inputted into Munis on December 4th. And then from there, I'm going to be invited into a meeting with the town administrator and the town finance director to discuss it. And they would like me to provide a narrative with what is being lost in our cuts, what I expect the cuts to result in. So I'll share all that with you when we get to it. I haven't taken step number one with it because it's so brand new. But I have had a lot of, Sean and I both saw this coming, and it was not a shock to me. And so we've already exchanged ideas, and we're not panicking about it. We think we'll get by with it just fine. But I will express that it's not an optimum situation, obviously. And as John just said, you can't do it year in and year out. Or you're going to have implications. So I'll keep the committee up to date with where the budget stands in next month's meeting.
Okay, great. That fits in with our calendar, folks. If you noticed on the agenda, our next meeting is December 15th. Roman, does that conclude your overview as far as finances are concerned? Do you want to go on to the Golf Now update?
Yeah, I'll keep going if nobody else has questions. Like I said, don't feel like you have to do this. I'm going to provide this this sheet monthly, so just get used to absorbing this sheet, and then it'll be a good monthly checkup for everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so Golf Now, really fast. This has been fantastic. I mean, I think it took us a long time to get this working. There's been a lot of growing pains with the Golf Now situation. As far as, you've heard me mention in the past, I'd love to move to a fully integrated system, but this is not the year to do it. I think we're relying very heavily on the Chelsea system. We relied very heavily on it this past year. And so I don't want to pull the rug out from anybody going into next year. But let me commend Mike Saragin, who's our tech guy in the office, for just working through the Golf Now integration with Chelsea, which has been a handful. That being said, this snapshot right here is our new booking engine that the Golf Now provided us on our website. So if anybody goes to cranberryvalley.golf to book a tee time, member of the public, they click on the button non-member, they go to this booking engine. This page right here has the heading Golf Now. It doesn't say Golf Now anywhere on the page. This, to all of our customers, is the Cranberry Valley booking engine. It is fantastic. It's much more modern than our previous booking engine. It's really very customer friendly. And from the moment it opened, we started having a lot of bookings on it. So what I'm going to ask the committee to do is to endorse the idea of pursuing the exact same agreement we had this year next year, to continue, because it really only kicked in late in the year. We had good success with it, but because we're going to move into next year wanting the same things: contactless payment, advanced payment from the public, having the public have a nice, easy, modern way to book tee times with us. I would like to get the committee's endorsement to pursue a redo of the exact same agreement we had this year with Golf Now. And then before I ask you that, Clem, let me just show you one thing. This is an example of myself, all of our managers at the golf course, myself, Mike Saragin, and our head pro, Dick Fagan, get a daily update on all the sales on Golf Now. that are upcoming. The finance director and the town accountant also get this information. The reason I did a snapshot of this is this shows a pretty good amount of bookings for late in October. But when you see booking source where it says GN-GNBE 5.0,
Yes.
that's our website sales. There's no commission on that. So as you know, our deal with Golf Now is commission based. They only get commission on the bookings through golfnow.com. And you'll see on this whole sheet, there's only 2 of them. I would say 90+% of the bookings are going through our website and have no commission attached to them whatsoever. This deal is, we haven't even received a bill from them yet. This deal is very beneficial for the golf operation. You never know until you get it started what kind of action you're going to see and how much commission we would end up paying. From what we're getting with this snapshot, the commission is a very small number. Most people are booking directly through our website, which has no commission attached to it at all.
Personally, I'm very impressed, Roman. It's 21st century technology, and it looks like it's extremely efficient. And I'm just curious. It seems to me to be a no-brainer. Behind the architecture of their initiative, the Golf Now initiative, do they also, because I was trying to think back, do they also possess a Chelsea-like booking system?
They sure do. So when we, it's really a good one. It's got a lottery system. When we choose to put out an RFP, and I'm hoping it's going to be next fall, as we mentioned, it would be for a fully integrated system to do online sales, to manage our website, to do our marketing, and to do our T-sheet management, including the lottery system.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and it's just an insight. As when eventually we get to our new business tonight, we're talking about the Chelsea system, of course, and I think it's important to think ahead beyond this next calendar year, because the implications to go full in with Golf Now are I think profound. So any other comments from the group? Steve, please.
Yes, Roman, does Golf Now require you to offer discounts, a certain number of discounted rounds directly through Golf Now?
No, that's one method. Is they have the barter method. We chose not to do that because there's the big term in the golf industry is your greens fee integrity, and the warning stories about getting involved in Golf Now in a barter situation is you lose that greens fee integrity. Where say there's 4 of us lined up at the pro shop to pay for rounds, 3 of us pay $74, and then the person first in line pays 22 or something like that. That's what they call their hot deals. And so if you go on golfnow.com, they're always selling their hot deals. We chose not to go that route. We chose to do commission-based only. So we completely set all the rates. So every Golf Now tee time sold is sold at our current rate structure. They just get a commission on the ones sold through their website, not ours.
Jack Conley.
Roman, when you were negotiating this, didn't you mention that they had a minimum that you had to contribute to them, like $10,000?
No, so we set a ceiling that the maximum they could hit for commission was $9,500. Once they hit $9,500, the commission turns off and all the revenue is ours. Based on what I'm seeing here, you could go maybe a full year and not hit that $9,500, but that's why I'm going to recommend the exact same deal for next year. We get a full season under our belt, and at the end of the line, if we sell a lot of tee times through Golf Now and we hit that $9,500 number and it caps it there, that's not a lot to spend for the benefit we're getting.
Yep.
It seems to me, unless there are other comments to the contrary, I would entertain a motion that we pursue the same game plan that we've had with Golf Now. I think it portends to a really bright future relationship with them. So, would someone offer that motion?
I Offer the motion.
Thank you, Steve. In a second. Martha
Second.
Duffy? Any further discussion? All in
Yes,
favor?
question for Roman.
Yeah.
Hello. Question for Roman?
Yes, sir.
Is this going to replace the Chelsea system? For daily
No,
booking?
so not for next year. So what we're discussing is the current situation we're in, where when you go to our website, if you click member, you go right into Chelsea, and if you click non-member, you go to this booking engine right here. So it will not replace Chelsea. What we're discussing for the future, for next year, I do recommend we look into an RFP process, and I'm very impressed with GolfNow's booking engine and everything else. The GolfNow is really bought a lot of the big companies in golf, and I'm having a hard time remembering what their booking engine is called. It's been around since 2011, and they've had a lottery system since 2011, and we had a product demo last year from them, and I think a couple of guys that were in the demo with me, I think Mike Sargent from our office, we walked away thinking they stole the Chelsea technology because it looked exactly like Chelsea. But they've had it since 2011, and we would like to, before we dive all in on it, we're way ahead of the game right now, but before we dive way in, we'd like to get some references and reach out to some similar courses like ours to really get the nuts and bolts of the lottery system and make sure it works like ours. Because as I mentioned throughout this year, the Chelsea system, it had it was a real topic of conversation with a lot of people, but it worked. I mean, I analyzed it every single day based on the parameters we put into it and the expectations in it. It really worked. And so with the high demand we currently have, that's why I didn't recommend going away from it at the current time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move on. Clem, were you in the middle of a motion?
Yes. We have a motion that's been seconded. If there are no other comments, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Paul, thank you. It's unanimous. Roman, I hope that gives you the direction you need. And the next item, I believe you're going to cover, you're going to touch on the tournament schedule for
Yes,
next
sir.
year.
Yes, thank you for that vote. I will pursue that. So what I hope to do in December every year, I present a tournament schedule for the committee to approve. And I have not been in contact with any of our tournaments yet at this point. Who knows what the spring's going to bring? But I just wanted to just get some ideas from the committee before I reach out to our previous tournaments and any new ones we may pursue. What we've seen, I've got to think, I don't know what you guys think. I've got to think spring shotguns are in jeopardy. I mean, I don't think, we're going to go into spring as a normal golf season, but we'll see. What we learned this year is the idea that having an outing is financially better than having a regular day is false. If we don't own the restaurant, I mean, the only thing that would make that true would be if we owned the restaurant. And I know we want to look out for our restaurant vendor, but if XYZ corporation came to us and said they wanted to hold an outing and we picked a day for them and sold it, I think what we've learned this year is that's a financial loss compared to a regular day of being able to sell tee times, because there's just so much tee time demand these days. And then when we have regular days, we get to accommodate our members, with the equitable distribution in the Chelsea system. So I don't think that, the goal is to make this tournament sheet any bigger than it currently is. In fact, we may want to whittle it down a little bit. I'm getting, I know John Wheeler and Jack, I know you guys are on the Mid-Cape Men's Club. I'm getting a lot of calls from the other men's clubs and on the Cape, because there are a number of them. There's the Osterville Men's Club, the Mid-Cape Men's Club, I'm not even thinking of all, the Retired Men's Club. These are all traveling golf groups that normally get discounted shotguns or discounted tee times. I'm inclined to not pursue those this year. I think the tournaments we should look at on our tee sheet, so what you'll see right at the top there is the Salute Military Golf Association Mid-Cape Men's Club. We love our SMGA support. What I was thinking is instead of, and I know this is a popular tournament with our members, but it's a financial loss, and it's a day where if you choose not to play, you're, once again, the non-tournament members are getting phased out. My thought, and this is just a thought off the top of my head when I looked at the sheet, but the idea I wanted to present was if we invited the Salute Military Golf Association golfers for a day of golf, and we didn't charge them greens fees, and there's about 20 of them or 25 of them, and we just gave them that block of tee times to play amongst themselves and not have them mixed in with our members and not pay for their lunch, but just to have them, invite them out for that day to play golf, and we'd continue our relationship with them. It'd be a great thank you to them, but at the same time, it'd be a greens fee selling day, it'd be a member distribution day. So that was my thought on that one. The next one down the list, Retired Men's Club, I say we get rid of it. And what I would tell them is I'd be happy to book tee times for you at the full normal day rate under the regular advanced booking model. They just treat them just like a general public and not do a shotgun. Harwich Fire is different. I mean, I think that's a partnership that I think we should continue. The fire and the police, I think we should continue. So I would keep those on the books, and then the members, member event, the ladies members and member guests, I'd keep those on the books because those are important. The junior events I'd keep on the books because those are very important for what we do. But then when you get further down the list, when you get into October, the Pals for Life, we have a long relationship with them. I would not be too apt to chop them off the tournament list, but I don't know. I'd like to get your feedback to say, should we push it later? Because October 7th in previous years was late in the season. This year it's not late in the season. I mean, last week, I think on Monday, was it yesterday or yesterday at the golf course, we did 190 rounds. I mean, so we're getting your turkey day here. So, there may be a new landscape for golf where when we look at these outings and shutting down for the day, it's a loss. I mean, we should be selling greens fees and distributing our tee times to our members as an alternative, I think. Anyway, I've spoken a lot. What I was really hoping to do is get the committee feedback. So let me know what you think.
Okay, folks, I'd like to go right across the board as far as soliciting the committee input. John Wheeler.
John, a couple of comments. The Mid-Cape Men's Club has not met since, February, and probably longer than that. And frankly, the whole organization is in a state of flux because of the COVID thing, which is not going to get solved for some time yet. And I would imagine that the Retired Men's Club's got the same concept, being a social organization. So the idea of not going after them, if you will, of trying to attract them to come, I think is something which is a prudent strategy. I do. And other than that, I support your positions relative to the other groups. The question I have for you though is, what is the Land Ho charity?
So that's the restaurant created a charity to help local. I can't remember if they gave to the food bank last year or they gave to We Can, or if they gave to some particular I think each year they pick a few local charitable organizations to make donations to. And then it is the very broad policy of the golf committee that's been in place forever, which is charity tournaments pay half greens fee and full cart fee. And so when we look at the Harwich Police Association, Harwich Fire Association, they're paying because they're charitable. And I think those relationships are very important for us in the town. They're paying half greens fee and full cart fee for that day. And then there's the expectation that they're also having their banquet in the clubhouse. But the Land Ho charity, I would scrutinize that, if not take that off the list. I mean, I think I think that if we look at things, and one comment I wanted to mention, I know you're going through the whole committee here for comments. One thing I forgot to mention was I was approached by the director of the Harwich Chamber of Commerce that they would like to do an outing next year. And once again, that's a town relationship. Again, let me get your feedback. I think that the Land Hope charity event should slide off the list.
Okay, Jack Conley?
Yeah, I have no problem with what Roman's recommending. Comment. It seems like, especially where it's not a money-making event, to have some of these tournaments in here. So I have no issues.
Okay, great. Martha Duffy.
Roman, I like your distribution. I think we should be having tournaments for the police and the fire departments. But I also feel that this year we really need to focus on our members and what is going to benefit them.
Okay, anything else, Martha?
No.
Okay, John Crook.
I'm in support of Roman's recommendations. I think we should eliminate most outside outings with the exceptions of the ones that really have a relationship with the town. And the other thing I would like to keep in place would be any youth-oriented events like the drive, chip, and putt, and any mass golf events that we, are selected for. I'd like to see those continue. But other than that, I'm in support of Roman's recommendation.
Excellent. Steve, please.
I fully support Roman's recommendations.
And Paul White.
And there's not much left to say. I agree with the other members. If it's a standing relationship that, we've had for a lot of years, as with the police and the fire, and certainly, as John said, with the youth-oriented programs, definitely. But the others, I think Roman's recommendations make a lot of sense.
Thank you, everybody. And Roman, I'll just weigh in my 2 cents. I'm in total agreement with your recommendations, and I'm very pleased to see that, once again, the emphasis on growing the game, the drive, chip, and putt qualifier that you've included in our relationship, which is significant. And I think we got tremendous feedback this past year. Our relationship with the Massachusetts Golf Association is outstanding. I want to see that continue. So,
let me, thanks to everybody for your feedback. I appreciate that. Not to complicate things, so as far as the Monomoy athletic boosters and then pursuing a new event with the Harwich Chamber of Commerce, do we consider those insider town relationships that we should continue or should pursue as new relationships, or should we not pursue those?
I feel in the era of COVID, we really shouldn't pursue new events right now at this time. That should be our policy.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
good point, John.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Monomoy athletic booster, we've done those for 3 or 4 years. What's your thoughts on booking a date for them next year?
What time of the year do they usually have it?
They have been playing on Columbus Day. They pay a premium rate to play on Columbus Day. Oh. But I could recommend this a different day.
I would recommend a different day, Roman.
Okay, but you would consider booking them once again?
Yes.
I have mixed feelings about it, Roman, in that the Cape Cod Women's Golf League, the Cranberry Valley Women's League financially supports the golf team at the high school.
Yes. They have in the past, though, Martha. I believe the boosters also assist with the golf teams. In the past, at their events, they have the golf teams play with folks in the event.
Hey, Roman, I have a comment too on the Booster Club. I think number one, you should probably move the date to something that you feel more comfortable with. But I think I'm in agreement with the Booster Club only because anything that we do to support interscholastic athletics at the high school level, I think that's good, especially in terms of what we're going through right now. The more kids that are involved in sports at the high school level, I think is a very positive thing. So I think anything that we can do to help that is worthwhile.
Okay, I agree. Thank you for the feedback. So I'll put together a schedule based on our discussion. I'll reach out to the people in my contacts with these groups, and I'll have a tournament schedule for you next month.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you, Roman.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that concludes Roman's director's report. And Roman, thank you very much. Appreciate the effort put forward. Going back to the agenda, folks, under new business, we're going to consider two items. The first is a Chelsea system policy for 2021 to be reviewed as is consistent with our method of operation. We will have 3 readings and then a vote for adoption. In light of Mr. Sennett's letter, there is certainly I guess a crossover of sorts, but I think in deference to the agenda, again, I'd like to pursue the Chelsea system policy in light of the COVID year that we've experienced. And it goes without saying, and I'm sure everyone realizes this, suddenly after 10 plus years, the pressure on the system was somewhat overwhelming. And I think everybody acknowledges that. In reference to Mr. Sennett's comments, for example, in his letter that I'm sure everybody read, he's been a member here for 12 years, and yet this is the first year where, his, according to his letter and comments, his satisfaction, certainly was questionable. So, Roman, I'm going to defer to you, if you would, give us your analysis, and, perhaps you can put up as well a slide that will speak to the operational changes that you're proposing.
Okay. Here is the slide. This has very little change from what Jack Conley and I presented at the last meeting. I think number 9 was the only one I really changed some language or added to it. Would you like me to read the items, Clem?
No, I think everybody's had a chance to look at these suggestions. It's effectively a methodology to address problems that the committee, identified, in our last couple of meetings and through our discussion on this issue. So I guess it's open to comments, from the membership. Jack, please. Jack Conley.
Yeah, Roman, perhaps you can clarify me on number 7. The guest points apply to any guest round and a member tea time. If I look at Mr. Sennett's letter, one of his identification of an issue with the Chelsea system was new members now team as partners, inviting 2 guests each weekend and full point system. When a member assigns or includes a guest in their booking, do the guests get any points?
Yeah, so in general, what our rule has always been on guests and member tea times is one member can bring one guest. So, if you had a husband and wife The husband can put in with a guest, the wife can put in with a guest. They can play in a member tee time. So that is the case. This year, the Chelsea system, we paused the points, I think mid-season, we paused the points from being applied in that case because, and I mentioned this at a previous golf committee meeting, the Chelsea system couldn't differentiate in distributing points from member tee times and non-member tee times, so that when members were playing in non-member tee times, we had cases where a member pre-booked an outing. I think it was a wedding party, and he ended up with 15 points for booking the 4 tee times. And we had many cases such as that. We had, based on you and I's conversation though, Jack, and my conversations with Chelsea since then, we found a workaround where we can do exactly what's said here, where guest points can be applied to any guest round in a member tee time, but then the guest points will not be applied in non-member tee times. So that if a member is taking a group in a non-member tee time and paying for the greens fee, paying for all the greens fees in that non-member tee time, they would not receive points for that, but they would receive the points for their guests in member tee times.
Right, but what kind of, I guess my question really is, how many points, is it the same as the member, or is there, how are the guest points applied? Or how are they calculated? How many points you assign to a guest?
So I mean, we could look into this any which way, but what we have been doing is 1 point. So, 1 point for the member, 1 point for the guest. So in that case, the member would get 2 points for bringing a guest for a round.
Okay, but if a member comes in with 4 points and he brings a guest, how many points does that individual incur?
The amount of points the member has doesn't have anything to do with it, other than it'll affect their placement when they request for the tee time. So, but they'll if the member brings a guest, you say you brought a guest today and you accumulated those 2 points, and you wanted to bring a guest next week, you would just enter that draw with 2 points from bringing your guest today.
Right, but if I'm coming in with a number of points, I mean, that's really the reality, is a member has a certain number of points and they're bringing a guest. If they come in with 4, does the guest get 4 points as well?
Okay, no, that's not the way it's set up, no. So if you come in with 4 points,
doesn't that determine your lottery position?
Yeah, so your 4 points would determine the lottery position. You're right, but the guests would not have any points when entering the lottery.
Okay, but isn't that the issue that Mr. Senate is bringing up, is if they don't get any points, then to me it seems like they should be assigned the same number of points the member should have.
I'm not sure I'm following. Assigning points to guests? You mean the members, the guests should mirror the members' points?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess to me, if you're using the members' points to determine the lottery position, and the guest has no points, that's unfair.
Okay.
I think the guests ought to assume the members' points. I don't know whether that's possible or not.
All right, so in that case, they would enter the draw with 8 points. If you had 4 and you were bringing a guest, they would enter the draw with 8 points and most assuredly not get a tee time.
Don't know that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'd have to look into that one, Jack. That's not something I've explored. What we've explored is more the distribution of the point for bringing the member. I'm sorry, for the member bringing the guest.
Right, okay.
Okay, Martha Duffy. Martha?
I'm going to pass right now.
Okay, John Crook?
guest. A guest is not a member, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I have no comment.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I personally think we're doing this backwards. Rather than going into the details about operational changes for 2021 from what we've historically had, what is the data showing us? We get anecdotal feedback from members' frustrations about their inability to get tee times, and colored with, albeit just anecdotal, that in their minds, there are a small group of people that seem to have figured out a way to be able to get a significant number of primary tee times over and over again. If we need to look at the detailed booking data so that we can figure out what the problem is before we start looking at details on how to try to fix the problem. Do we really have that problem? Or is it just that we have such a demand and we have limited tee times, obviously, that it's inevitable anyways? What does the actual booking data show?
Well, I can help with that, Steve, because I analyzed the lottery draw all summer and the data associated with it. There's no manipulation happening other than if you consider, bringing guests to manipulation. The member, what you mentioned, if there's certain members that are getting preferred tee times, there's nobody getting any special preference in the system. I can assure you that. I think what we've tried to do, and what I've discussed with Jack when we were talking about the Chelsea changes for this year, we always are trying to close certain doors, which is we have members that try to manipulate certain aspects of our system, such as booking with a guest and showing up with a mail. Well, my guest couldn't make it, but here's Jack Conley's in his place. And so we've tried to put policies in place to say, well, he's going to have to pay the guest fee. You're responsible for that guest fee, which closes the door to those situations. Having the guest points applied to the member round, I think that's a big deterrent, even though it's not going to be mirrored, or it hasn't been mirroring the members' points in the draw. I think the members will incurring the extra point for bringing a guest will be significant because, in the past, we had, as I mentioned all year in our golf committee meetings, in the past we had overflow lists on 4th of July weekend, on Labor Day weekend, and very few other times in the year. We had overflow lists into November this year. So, the demand is certainly completely a different situation. So in the past, if you had 6 points, you were still getting a tee time. In the middle of the summer, if you had 3 points, you were really in jeopardy for a tee time. So the points were much more at a premium this year. But I'd be happy to share any data that I could with you. But I can assure you, there's no manipulation where a member has found a way to skirt the system or skirt the priority lottery system. I think that there are cases where more savvy members know what time to call when they call when the pro shop opens for what's available, and they're monitoring the tee sheet, and when the time drops, they're on it. I know certain people that you do see on the tee sheet all the time. That some people there's a couple of people in my mind, I won't name their names, but I'm sure many of you know them, that are on the tee sheet every day. And I've had people that play golf with them tell me they take turns while they play a hole, where while I'm playing the hole, you monitor the tee sheet at Cranberry Valley, and on hole 2, I'll monitor it, and they take turns because they want to get a tee time for tomorrow when something opens up, and they're just on it all day long. That's no manipulation. That's working hard to monitor the openings and closings on the tee sheet.
See, Roman, that's the data I'm looking for when I talk about the actual usage data. It could be contrary to that. That may not be manipulation of the system, but we need a system that affords the opportunity for people to be able to play, for people with some level of equality. And just because somebody is so hell-bent on following the current system that we have set up, that they're checking in between holes while they're on the course, if they're getting 60% of the prime time tee times, member tee times, during the course of the summer, as an individual member, then the system is broken. Whether they're manipulating or not, we don't have a good and fair and equitable system. That's why I'm saying we need to take a look at, of our members, how many are having a very abnormally high percentage of the prime tee times. And if the system that we have in place today affords that opportunity through whatever means it does, then the system is not working. Because no one should be able to be on the tee sheet every day between 8 and 10 o'clock during the summer. That's not the system we want to have. And so that's why I'm saying, before we start trying to figure out the system, we need to figure out the problem. And if
Steve, in those cases, I mean, in cases such as you're mentioning, the placement where the tee sheet is placed, you know, every tee this summer, when we've had such demand, every tee time has been given out in the lottery 3 days in advance. Once the members start canceling their tee times, you know, I don't. It's first come, first serve for those, and that's how members are getting into these other tee times. There's no equitable way to have a second lottery for, okay, let's now produce a lottery for the canceled tee time that just occurred. Anybody that you're seeing on there is getting into a canceled tee time. It's not one that was equitably distributed in the lottery. Once the lottery occurs, the lottery is equitable entirely, and the points are applied, and somebody with, you know, a lot of points is not getting a tee time or not getting a prime tee time. If they have a lot of points and they're in a prime tee time every day, they're getting it based on cancellations. And I don't know how you would not do cancellations as first come, first serve.
Well, there certainly is a way within the system to do it without being first come, first serve. There's no question in my mind about that. But
not without having saving all the tee times and doing a secondary lottery or a third lottery, or I mean, I've never heard that as an option with Chelsea. I don't know if it's worth pursuing, because, you know, if a foursome cancels, and you know, you want to go through a lottery system to place it, that doesn't make much sense to me. I think that tee time becomes available for available members, because, you know, one of the benefits of our system is being able to monitor the tee sheet and log in through your Chelsea account and see what's available and book what's available.
Okay, Paul White. Paul?
I don't have the depth of experience that a lot of the other members do, but it just seems patently obvious that there's no perfect system. We've got a system that cues to be fair. I think it's designed to be fair. You know, I think you just make adjustments as you go along. I mean, I don't think we can make it completely perfect under any circumstances. And a lot of the suggestions that we have in front of us make sense. If people think we need more research, that's one thing. But, you know, we can't spend an inordinate amount of time on it. I mean, golf is popular. People want to play. And we've got to make the spaces available to those that are interested in playing. I have nothing more to add to the discussion.
Paul, point well taken. And in deference to both Jack and Steve, look, we've got a month before we review these proposed changes for 2021. That's why we have the 3 readings. I would encourage both of you as committeemen to dialogue with Roman, and if we've got to tweak or adjust anything here, Roman, we can do that. Okay.
Could I make a couple of comments?
No. This is a committee responsibility, and that's why we have a public comment section at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to get to the second point under new business, which was Mr. Sennett's letter to the selectmen. And I guess, Roman, you have some comments, I think that, focus on some aspects of Mr. Sennett's letter, and I hope everybody has had a chance to read it. I did personally as well. Roman, your comments.
Yes, I think in a broad sense, I think we're addressing some of the comments with the direction we've taken in the rates and fees, as far as focusing on Harwich residents in placement. Some of the specific cases that Leo mentions in his letter, such as I believe it was October 3rd. This season, that particular date was an abnormal date, and I think crunching any data from that would be not representative of the whole year. Not to make excuses, but as this year went on, as I mentioned in my director's report, we're building the T-sheets right now for the year because they go live in January. Well, we did the same thing last year, and then we had to scrap them and rebuild them at 15-minute increments, scrap them and rebuild them at 12-minute increments, scrap them and rebuild them at 10-minute increments. And because of that, there were a few days that the regular distribution was not maintained, because if in January we booked an outing for, and I know the golf committee supported us recognizing the pre-COVID bookings. If we booked a group of four tee times or so at 9 o'clock in February before any of this happened, and then it went through all these different changes, that affected the member and non-member blocks on some dates, and that was one of the particular dates that was affected. The regular sentiment, I've known Leo in my entire time at the golf course. I know his group he plays with. I know him, very friendly with them. They're great guys, and I've seen them every Saturday since I've worked there. I think that your situation, I look at, very similar. It reminds me very similar to John Wheeler, where when I monitor the placement on the tee sheet, John does not play very often. I don't mean to embarrass you, John, by using this example, but John doesn't play a ton of golf, but his friends play a lot of golf. And so it always makes me shake my head that when I see John on the overflow list, it's because he put in and he's got no points, but he put in with, JD, who's got 6 points, and I can name the guys. And so he's got 0 points, but he didn't get a tee time. And I think that's the case with Leo's group, is some of the members play a lot of golf and some only play on the Saturday. And so that's a unique case, and this year that was problematic for this traditional foursome to play in their traditional time slot, where in the past, if you had an average of 4 points for a group, you'd get that morning tee time. This year, if your group had an average of 4 points, you were not getting that tee time. So it basically just on the demand. Other areas of the letter that I wanted to address, I think when Leo suggests Chelsea changes, I think we didn't go exactly with your suggestion. Jack and I worked on this last month, but I think in spirit we've tackled a bunch of these. I know you mentioned in your letter recurring tee times, where you'd have John Cookson for 4 straight tee times. It never occurred to me to limit the number of tee times one non-member can book in a non-member tee time. I mean, if in that case, that was one gentleman that called and said, I'd like to pre-book 4 tee times for Saturday. And if that non-member block had 4 tee times in it, we book them, and we book them as Cookson, guest of Cookson for 16 people. So we don't require the name of each person. So those recurring tee times are a big part of our business. Is we do buddy trips and wedding parties and such, and so we don't keep points on them or limit the amount. If it's a non-member tee time, a non-member could call on January 2nd and book every 9:30 tee time for the whole year. We'd take their credit card number, and they'd have to prepay, and they could theoretically book the entire non-member block every Saturday for the whole year, as long as it's non-member tee times. So those non-member tee times have no restrictions. I did see in your letter, you mentioned like contracts with, you know, the Bayside and the Heritage House and the hotels. The one concept I know the committee knows, but I think a lot of members are always spooked that these hotels get some kind of priority. They're strictly the booking agent for non-member tea times. There's no priority for them to get a tea time when they call. It's just it's almost like they're just the booking agent, and we tell what's available in the non-member block on Saturday, such and such date, and they get to book that. The one privilege we give those hotels is we give them invoicing capabilities, and in most cases we've moved that to a credit card on file, so that when the golfers play, we go ahead and we go ahead and bill the hotel that day for their tea times. But there's no priority, and when you see Bayside on the tee sheet, you might as well see Cookson or Jim Smith or whoever, any non-member, because they have to all follow the same rules, other than that invoice booking, invoice billing. But Jack, did you have a comment to make? I see you.
Well, I just want to confirm, you never book outside a window, like a non-member window. If you get more non-members in that window, you never book out into member times, correct?
That's correct. And the one thing I would say, John, is, I'm sorry, Jack, is in certain cases, we may make an adjustment, and it's very rare, but if it's a case where, you know, we have, say, it's a large group, it's one of our traditional groups that plays, and they've got 8 foursomes, and we've only got 7 available, we may borrow that 8th tee time and take a non-member tee time somewhere else, but that's an incredibly rare situation. For the most part, almost entirely, the way we set up the tee sheet, as I mentioned in my director's report, with that 70-30 distribution, and however, in Leo's letter, I think you mentioned, Leo, so how the distribution changes throughout the year. You know, we do have different distribution levels throughout the year where, based on our starting time of 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., if it's a Wednesday, which is a men's sweeps day, that's an entirely different tee sheet because they get 5 hours of tee times. But in general, we have, based on the starting, the first tee time of the day, we have a very strict format for how the tee times go, and you know, with that 70-30 or 60-40 distribution. And I think at one point this year we had it up on our website. It may be helpful to the members if we put that back up on our website, just to say, you know, what the sample distribution is for each time of the season. But to answer your question, Jack, we recognize those blocks entirely. That's why we consider the member tee times protected.
Okay. Anyone else with specifics regarding the letter? I just have a comment that I'd like to make, and I don't want to speak for the selectmen, but I think it's important going forward. This letter was addressed to Mr. Ballantyne, and specifically, since it's golf related and is very specific to us in our operations, in the future, I mean, if someone has a legitimate concern, please bring it to the committee. I think that is the modus operandi that might be followed. And I think not to use the COVID excuse, again, and it's in Mr. Sennett's words, I've got the letter right here. Over 12 years on average, he's played, 20 18-hole rounds per year, and this year it's only been 4. I mean, that tells you something, I think, emphatically, in an indirect way. And to Steve's point earlier, you have to look at Chelsea data in a holistic way. There's only, a few examples that have been extrapolated here or extracted, points that Mr. Sennett's chosen to take. And I guess I'm probably being overly defensive, but I mean, emotions are running high in a lot of situations, and I think characterizing the Cranberry Valley golf staff as not being adequately informed as far as the Chelsea system is concerned is a little naive. We have dealt with this, for a long, long time. So,
Mr. Smith, this is Leo. This is Leo. I'd like to just talk a little bit about the letter and the Chelsea system in itself. Prior to digging into the data, I too was looking at the Chelsea system and the data sheet.
Leo, please accept my apologies, but with all due respect, we've got an agenda. I've got to move on. I want to get to some important issues in old business, and I want to afford you as much time as I can in the public comment section. So please hold those thoughts if you would. I'd like to move to the old business, and in particular, the restaurant contract is up for discussion, and it's very complex. Roman can give us a little insight as far as that's concerned. Item number 2, the instruction license, is a little less complicated, and I absolutely, because it's so important, I want to make sure that we pay attention to the capital project updates. So Roman, in particular, the restaurant.
Yes, the restaurant is fairly complicated. I sent the contract or the current lease to everybody to review. I've had a number of meetings with Ron Leiter about it. What I'd really like to get tonight is your comments on what you think should be in the lease, what you think should be out of the lease. As a starting point, I had a very in-depth discussion with Ron Leiter about the current lease. And the current lease, just for your background, our town, for one reason or another, does not do a lot of lease writing and does not have people on board to do it. So this was borrowed from Barnstable and their lease with Ian Philbrick, who was our former vendor for the restaurant at Old Barney. So, and when we worked on this, I think it was John Moretti, Clem, that took the lead on this lease, but 5 years ago. We actually had the lease that had the line through it that would say Barnstable and the line through it that said Old Barnstable Fairgrounds. So I know for a fact that that's where this came from. And so a lot of the stuff when you read it just does not apply. I mean, and my comments with Ron Leiter was, he said this lease really does not represent what we're looking at the golf course, and his concern is it could scare away a potential vendor because it's so restrictive, it's so town dependent, or it's so town favoring, and it really he said he was crazy to sign it. And when he looks back, he was crazy to sign it, and he thanks me and the committee for not holding his feet to the fire on a lot of the items in there, because they just don't apply and they just aren't really fair for his situation. He said, we should really have a lease that a prospective vendor could look at and say, this is friendly to me to make some money and to have a business. Now, that being said, I think from my standpoint, we really want to have a vendor in there that is focused on golfers, and the Ron Leiter absolutely agreed with me there. And so his suggestion, and it was a suggestion I had as well for this new lease, is to have in the new lease no dinner service, and that may get rid of any vendor that wants that sees the restaurant as not a golf course restaurant, but it's a restaurant and wants to focus on, just being a restaurant and not being a golf course restaurant. So I'd love to get your ideas on that. He thought that that would be a good inclusion, because I think one of the really strong points of Ron Leiter in the current hot stove situation is that they put golfers first. And then if we have an outing, that's what they're doing. If he has a wedding rehearsal party, he's making sure that the golfers are taken care of first, and he's got a small area put aside for his other outings. So that was one area. But I think in very general sense, I would not look at the current lease as something like, let's change this wording in this section, change this wording. I really think it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. I think this needs to be what we need to do is really put together what we want in the new lease and take it to the town lawyers to say, put together a new lease. I've already been in touch with Bob Lawton, the assistant town administrator, who seems to be taking the lead on all lease situations these days while he's still in his position. And he knows that we're discussing this tonight. And I told him that I would bring to him a list of what we would like in the new lease. And then he'll help us go through the town lawyers to build a new lease based on what we want to see in it.
Okay, I think that key point that you raised is the fact that food services have to be specific to the golfers at Cranberry Valley and our guests. And I would absolutely concur, you know, a dinner venue, you know, once in a while, whatever, might be appropriate. But, you know, as a rule of thumb, I'm in agreement with you. So we want to fast track what we've got going on here. Any of the other committeemen, committee women that would like to weigh in? Jack, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I would recommend you do something like 5, 10, 15, just to minimize the first year impact in the rates. I don't care what the rates are, but make the first year lower than it currently is, and maybe increase them in the second and third years. I would eliminate the requirement for the beverage cart. I think that does no useful purpose, certainly at least for the members. I guess I'm confused about the dinner service. It's in the current lease, it says service until 4 o'clock every day. So there's no requirement in the current lease to say to provide dinner service.
Yeah, that's a minimum in the current one, but the door was open that if they wanted to be open for dinner, that they could.
Okay, and I would move the times for the breakfast. They're far too early for the, I think it's 6:30 during this, 5:30 during the summer, and I think that's far too early for a restaurant provider to expect someone to be there. And I don't think anyone's there till 8 or 9 anyway, most times. So those would be my 3 things. I don't think the beverage card helps. I'd lower the rate, especially in the first year, and I guess that's it.
I think those are good comments, Jack. I do know that one difference with the beverage cart has been that we required the vendor in the past with the current lease to provide the beverage cart. But as part of our extension, we've now purchased that. So that beverage cart now belongs to our golf operation. And I think what we've learned with Ron Leidner is not making him use it, but he's been that's been a profitable enterprise for him when he can choose when he wants to put it out. If we've got an outing on the golf course, or we've got one of these hotel groups or buddy trips on the golf course, it can be very profitable. To make him send it out during sweeps, it would not be profitable. So I think that to your point, not putting requirements on it, but we own it, so they won't have to buy it, and we can make it available to them when appropriate. I think that's smart. And I know Ron's he's developed a really dedicated breakfast crowd. So, I think maybe not requiring them that early start, but allowing it. It's hard to remember back to a normal year, but last year, if you remember on weekends, that restaurant became the trendy breakfast spot in town, I think. I mean, he was filling the porch and filling the place Saturday and Sunday mornings. But your points are well taken, not to make him, not to force him to open too early when it wouldn't be profitable.
Yeah, I agree. It was popular, but it seems like it's 9 o'clock and later, or after church or services or whatever. It never seemed like it was very busy early in the morning.
Okay, John Wheeler.
I think, but to that point, I think that it's the only place in town where you can go for breakfast or cannot have to stand in line. I mean, every time I go by some other unnamed restaurants in Harwich Center, then I might say, I feel like rolling down the window and say, hey, you don't have to wait if you go up the street. Because it's sort of a side comment. I think Jack's comments are comprehensive. They hit right at the core of things to think about with the lease, and I would, and I have nothing to add other than what Jack has shared.
Okay, Paul White. Paul?
Very quickly, I agree with Roman that lease has got to be simplified. I mean, it's much too complicated. And I think to whatever degree it can be whittled down and made sensible. You know, I'm a big fan of Ron and his service. I think it's a very valuable addition, and hopefully he'll be in a position to bid on a more simplified approach. I think Jack's comments were very helpful as well.
Okay, great. John and/or Steve or Martha?
Clem, when does the lease run out?
The current extension runs out December 31st.
Okay. And I agree with Jack's comments. You know, those are right on. Simplify the lease. My other question would be, does he want to come back?
So I've expressed this a few times. He's a tough negotiator. He holds his cards pretty close to the vest. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this was the selectmen voted last week to relieve him of the $10,000 remaining on his lease payment for this year based on your recommendation and my recommendation. That was a big step for him. He wanted to see that. He wants to see a clause in the lease that would say if there are COVID or state restrictions based on a pandemic or based on whatever, that the lease payment could be reviewed and possibly reduced. And but I get he won't tell me that he's all in on it, but I get the impression he tells me every time I talk to him he's completely on the fence. I think that if we make this lease a little more user friendly, I think he's interested.
Okay.
My only comment would be that if we're happy with him at Cranberry Valley, and it appears that we are, if in addition to Jack's three comments, I mean, what comments does he have in terms of simplifying the lease to attack those if we feel they're right? I don't think any of us are in the restaurant business, and to come up with a new lease and get it done.
Right. Good point, John. Martha?
I agree with Jack. I think we need to simplify it.
Steve?
Yes, I agree. I think it should be a pretty simple, straightforward lease. And I think we need to do it sooner rather than later, because I think we need to put it out to bid. I think we need to see what else, if there's any interest from anybody else, and looking at the restaurant.
Excellent. Roman, you've got one place. Bring us back a simplified lease, collaborate with Bob Lawton, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. Any last comments? Jack?
Yeah. Well, Roman, is the lease down in Saquatucket Harbor for a restaurant. Is there any possibility of leveraging that lease? I don't know what that one has done.
There definitely is, and I'll get my hands on that one. In my discussions with Ron Leidner about our current lease, he said that one is because we mentioned that. I mentioned that as being something that we could maybe look at. He said he's seen that one and it doesn't really apply to our situation, but that's okay. It could be a starting point, or let me at least review it to see if there's anything helpful in it.
Okay, great. Roman, moving on quickly, the license agreement for instructional services.
Yes. Yep. So everybody saw the letter from Bob Miller. I think that was included in your packet, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Okay. I think Bob's done a great job in general. I mean, he's one of the most respected instructors on the Cape and in Southeastern Mass. In New England, really, and his team is top notch. I mean, he's the type of person that can put together a team of really top notch instructors. So the fact that and every year he writes a nice recap that I find very helpful. So I presented his recap for the season and our desire to pursue a new license to Bob Lawton, once again, the assistant town administrator. He's researching whether or not this needs to be a lease or a license, which is just, you know, legal stuff. I've tried to convince him that it should just be very simple and be the same thing again, another license agreement for the, and I'm considering, again, I'd love to get the committee feedback, but the starting point is $5,000 once again for the first payment, and then we increase it by 5%, exactly the same as last time. I'm trying to get this done simply. So I got all my information to Bob Lawton. He's researching the legality of lease or license right now. And he wants just the simple suggestions. His thought was he wants there to be some, he doesn't think the current agreement has enough minimums in it to say you must, as at a minimum, offer summer junior clinics. You must at a minimum offer weekly clinics for ladies or weekly clinics for men. And you must, as a minimum, be on our property giving a lesson program, you know, for a certain amount of hours a week or a certain amount of days a week. He thinks that that's legally required so that we can have a way to gauge if he's being successful or not. I mean, I think we will all agree that on his own, he's pursued this stuff on his own, but that's what Bob Lawton, representing the town, would like to see me come up with a list of minimums to be achieved, which is pretty easy. So I'll take Bob's letter and use that to extrapolate some minimums for offering junior clinics, offering weekly ladies clinics and men's clinics, and requiring them to be on property 3 days a week, say, giving lessons, or a minimum of, you know, 10 hours a week giving lessons. So something simple like that.
Thank you, Ron.
On those minimums, is there any chance that that he's not meeting those minimums? In the sense I get from reading his letter, he's way above them.
Yeah, there's no worry there at all. I think my discussion with Bob Lawton is if a second vendor comes into the mix and wants to bid on this, and then, you know, bids crazy, say they bid double what Bob's been paying, and they get the bid, and then they, a month into it, decide that they're not interested any longer. And they all of a sudden we have somebody not offering an instruction program.
Okay, Roman, doesn't the town just have the option, whether it be the restaurant or Bob Miller, just to extend the lease?
No, it has to, my understanding, John, is that extension has to be part of the original lease. And so both of these leases, the lease and the license, originally had extension options in them. And we've already exhausted those extensions.
Because the 5 years are up.
Yeah, the 5 years are up. So they were both 3 and 2.
Okay, folks.
And in order to do a 5-year deal, it has to be approved at town meeting. So that's why we've always done 3 years.
Right. Okay, I'd like to move on to what I regard as our key element of old business, our capital project update. Once again, we're taking baby steps, I guess, but Roman, bring us up to date, please.
Yeah, I'll bring you up to date. So our delayed solar project is moving forward finally after our project manager had COVID and because of COVID had building permit problems. The permit has been issued and they will be on property tomorrow, and they're promising me an updated time schedule tomorrow because the permit was just issued. So I can share that with the committee, obviously, before next meeting. I'll as soon as I get that updated schedule, I'll share it with the committee. I'm expecting it tomorrow. That's so that's back in action. As far as I mentioned earlier, my director's report, the landscaping project, we have a bidder. You're welcome, everyone, to tune in if you'd like to the public bid opening, which it's on the town website under procurement. There's a link to the GoToMeeting open meeting where those bids will be opened on Thursday at the 19th at 2 p.m. So when we had our mandatory, let me go back a minute. 36 people took out or requested the bid documents. Part of the bid documents were a required walkthrough. which happened last week. 6 companies showed interest and came to the required walkthrough. The town procurement manager and engineer has the contact information on them. And to this point, we've had 1 bid. My expectation, I don't know if this is really anything anybody's interested in, is hearing my expectation. I think what we're going to see, I know this process is dragged out, and we tried to keep it under 50 and tried to keep some control of it during the season. And we had people weren't really interested in the project because they could tell we were trying to keep it on the cheap. My impression is these are going to be big numbers that we get back to this. So if you'll remember, we have a $50,000 article from town meeting. Is funded by the Golf Improvement Fund for this specifically, but this is also because it's also encompassed in the full Carp Farm project. Anything above 50 would go into the Carp Farm project budget, which is currently on budget. So we could absorb some of that, and that's what we're currently waiting to do. But I'm thinking a number may be more like 80 that we're going to see. We could see 80 to 100 for this project. But we saw some really strong bidders. You may be able to help me with this. I can't remember the name of the gentleman. Do you remember the company that did the tee box on 10 and 14? I remember that fellow. The name slipped my mind. He showed up to the meeting. So we've had 1 company that has done work on the golf course before. That he built our 10th and 14th tee boxes, and he gave us a good price in those days. So we'll see what happens. But indications are that I'm bracing myself for a big number. But that's okay. We've got money. We've been ready to get this project going. Once again, it's got an end of February completion date. So the bidders to get this, they all are aware of the completion date requirement, and they will jump right on. Whoever gets awarded the bid will jump right on the paving side of it first, because that's going to be the most time-consuming issue, where with the paving plants closing around Christmas is the expectation. But that's where that stands currently.
Okay, and I think it's important to mention that Chip Florio, the project leader for Green Skies and Cobo Construction, be assured, generally the committee and the audience at large, he is absolutely committed to working through the winter toward job completion, and let's hope that the weather prevails and continues as good as it's been. So that wraps up.
Clem, excuse me, can I add one thing?
Overview. Yeah.
And then as a final component, I'm meeting with the town engineer tomorrow with the electrical engineer at the Carp Barn. He's working on 3 separate projects in town, but we're proceeding with the bid for the charger grid. And so he's going to make his first site visit to hopefully complete what he needs for the bid package for the charger grid. So we'll be meeting tomorrow on that one. I'll have more information to come from there.
Perfect, Roman. Yeah, John.
Yeah, well, when do you anticipate we're going to reconvene on the cart replacement project?
I'd like to hear a little progress on this first. Once we get from the Green Skies their updated timetable, and we find out what the bid process looks like for the charger grid, hopefully we can merge those 2 dates together and have a real thumbs up that end of February our interconnection is going to be in place, and we're a go for to move forward with the car lease. I did speak with the sales rep from EasyGo today, and we was discussing with him timetables on how quickly carts could be available. What I'm trying to squeeze a cost out of those guys is pretty difficult, but I called him in general to talk numbers with him and tell him that we were approved last night for our rates and fees for an extra $2. So I'm trying to get some numbers out of him to see if we'll be able to fit a GPS lithium battery top of the line car like our subcommittee discussed, and it seems like that will be doable and available. So I'm just staying in touch with those guys, and they're providing me with information that we can move forward once we have confidence that the interconnection will happen and the charter grid will be in place, that we can move forward quickly with the procurement of cars. And I wouldn't want to give the impression that we've already singled them out, but they were just a car that was considered favorable when we interviewed the companies last time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We now move to the public comments section, and Leo, I appreciate your patience, to say the least. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. Little background on the data and why I collected it. Yes, you're right. We have had a significant amount of rounds in the past. The four of us, and Roman knows exactly who we are. And we understood the whole situation with COVID also. I started looking at the data, particularly on the weekends, and did start noticing some of the patterns. And I will volunteer, if you want to give me the data, to look at further analysis for this committee and submit it privately. What we did do, though, as the four of us, was try to understand the system as it existed. So we not only split up as a foursome, we split up into the lowest possible point category as twosomes, and tried that also. And that's including two of our members having a point of 1 and 0, and we still were put on the overflow sheet. So, and then listening to what was happening on the course and listening to new members that was especially on the driving range, I kept hearing that they knew how to, quote, beat the system by having very low points and inviting a guest with 0 points. Therefore, there was really, whatever you want to call it, 2 against 1, or if members just go into the members bucket, that was the situation that was understood without the concrete data to date. One member in particular who signs up weekly as a single also had the same problem. So he was put in, we don't know what the buckets are. So we don't see some collaboration of members that says, even if 4 members had 1 point, the point system would kick them out. So we don't know exactly how the algorithms are written. So having written software all my life, I tried to dig in a little bit into what the Chelsea system is, and there's only very limited information without having the manual. What I did find out, though, is that for each and every member, there are a set of properties that can be set that says, what type of member are you? You can limit the rounds of play by member. You can also have guest restrictions by member and course restrictions. So I look at that from a software standpoint, and I said, aha, if I'm inviting a bunch of guests, I am able to flag that member in the background and control what I would consider a more fairer system as far as how the Chelsea works. Right now, I believe we're using the Chelsea system in its basic out-of-the-box format with the point system, and we're only allowed to manipulate points, not the rules and our business practices on how we would like to run the course. I'm familiar in my background that the rules and how you want to run an organization or a business are in the middle, not out of the box, but there's middleware that says, this is the way we want to run our company, our town, our course, what have you. So with that, after speaking to members, I said I would volunteer to reach out. I apologize, I didn't know how to reach out to this committee, so I reached out to the selectmen, which I did. And as a courtesy, he did forward the letter to this committee. So I offer myself for, if I can assist further, I would certainly help the tech lead if you would like that in Harwich. If not, but that was my findings. That's my understanding right now, is that there are properties that I just don't see within the data set that are being used. I could be all wrong. Roman would know better than I would, but it seems to me like like typical software modules, each and every individual has a set of properties that's associated with it. And I don't know that we're using that correctly.
Okay, thank you, Leo. You know, and if you had the opportunity, you know, maybe you could put these thoughts that you've articulated in writing if it's not too much trouble.
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, so that the committee can use the resource. And Leo, if it gives you any insight, this Chelsea outfit that we've, you know, contracted with, curiously, they have lost, and it's probably got something to do with golf now, quite a substantial market share of business in the U.S. And the servicing and the availability of their tech staff in the past was pretty commendable. But of late, and it speaks of a company that's on the skids, guess what? They've turned the spigot off. And, you know, I mean, if it's just an insight from me, and I've mentioned it before, out on that practice tee, it's interesting as to what you hear. Leo, when you talk about algorithms, how about the fact that you've got a guy who's bragging about, I've got 150 rounds in this year. I've got my membership down to $4.12 a round.
Yeah.
That kind of person doesn't help you or anyone else in this room that's a member.
Agreed.
So, you know, there are a lot of nuances, and I appreciate your insights, to say the least. Are there any other public comments to be entertained? Folks, thanks for your participation. I'd like to acknowledge Fran and Mike and Pete. If you can stay on, I'd just like to get the last names for the record. If I could, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no other business.
Adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you, Leo, for all your work. Thank you.
And a second to the closure motion. Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mike, your last